Welcome to the bizval podcast. At bizval, we are passionate about empowering entrepreneurs the world over to understand and unlock the value in their business. We work with advisors and entrepreneurs to demystify the value creation process when building a business. At bizval, we know how tough it is to grow and run a business, which is exactly why we've made valuations simple to understand, accurate, and affordable. Our unique blend of tech and touch ensures that you always receive the best service, authentic human engagement, and data-led insights to ensure that you build a business that provides you with freedom and choice. In the bizval podcast, we showcase stories of real entrepreneurs and advisors, sharing lessons and inspiration from their journeys to make your journey just that little bit easier. Welcome to the bizval podcast. This is a show where we talk to the people shaping the industry, how businesses are built, bought, sold, valued, and the whole ecosystem that supports that. I'm Graham Steven, the CEO of bizvalglobal.com. And today's guest is a young lawyer. I'm young at heart. He's still young, but he's doing something a little unusual. He's built and co-founded ventures while practicing. And he positions himself as the lawyer for business owners. Steven Landsberg, welcome to the show.
Hi, Graham. Thanks for having me.
Fantastic. So before we get started, we're going to talk a little bit about your journey, your background, where entrepreneurship meets law, a little bit about your firm and where you're at the moment. But before we get going, what's the quick version? What's the elevator? Who's Steven Landsberg and what is Landsberg and Co?
All right. So Steven Landsberg, I'm a corporate commercial attorney, at least by profession. Landsberg and Co is my law firm. We focus on advising founders on structure-related matters for succession planning, tax efficiencies, and risk mitigation. So I'm the founder of the company. I'm trained by great successes and previous firms that have taught me what I know and some of what I know. And yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Fantastic. So we're going to start right at the beginning. Okay. We seem to be making a habit. I mean, we interview partners and guests from around the world, but I think you're about the third or fourth person from KZN in Natal in South Africa on the show. And I think you're the second one from Westville Boys. So we're making a bit of a habit of that. But tell us a little bit about growing up in KZN for those international listeners. It's a coastal province in South Africa, and some of those early influences that shaped you while you were growing up, Steven.
Yeah, so KZN, born and raised. I stay in and around Umhlanga area now. It's on the north coast of KZN. I honestly feel like I live on holiday. This place is unbelievable. It's a hidden gem, and hopefully we keep it hidden for a bit longer. So not as to get overcrowded like KZN. Apologies, like Cape Town with all the expats there. So yeah, Westville educated family of entrepreneurs, come from a background, even extended family of entrepreneurs. So business ownership has always been something that I've wanted to explore. And yeah, I'm fortunate to have had people like my parents who are entrepreneurs themselves, my uncle who's an entrepreneur, and of course, like I mentioned earlier, the previous directors and business owners that I've dealt with, accumulating my knowledge in the corporate commercial area that I'm extremely grateful for.
Fantastic. I mean, you touch on that. Often we speak to guests on the show, and there's that theme of somebody in the family was an entrepreneur. It could be a dad, an uncle. And I suppose growing up, a lot of the conversation, whether it was informally over braai or over dinner or whatever the case might be, inevitably, revolved around business. Did that shape your thinking? I mean, did you, as you say, did you always want to be an entrepreneur? Or did you think, well, hey, I want to do something different? I want to go the corporate route. Or was that always in your DNA, Steven?
So being an entrepreneur is always something I wanted. It is, I've tried a few times and failed a few times along the way. Like you mentioned, growing up with, a father who is an entrepreneur, it is just the conversation and business does become a topic because, as you know, as a business owner, it just doesn't end. It is all the time, and there's problems that encroach all the time. So just being surrounded by that, I don't necessarily feel like I chose it. It just almost felt like the obvious path and the thing that I was meant to do.
And I suppose the beauty of having that support system around you is you don't have to seek out mentors. You've got them, you've got them surrounding you, which is great. But so you had this in your DNA, entrepreneurship chose you rather than you choosing it, I guess. But you then decided to study law. So, why did you study law? And I guess you paired that also with a commerce degree rather than sort of straight LLB. But talk us a little bit about the thinking process in terms of that grounding. Was it always just I'm going to study law as a fallback, or was there any sort of particular thought that went into that?
Yeah, so I'll be very honest with you. There was no real thought process behind the law itself. It just was the thing that almost came up first in my early development, and I just stuck with it. It was just never anything else. So I feel like I am grateful because it is something that almost was innate to me. I always wanted to do it. There was never another option in my brain. And of course, coming from that business background with ownership, with business owners and mentors in my family that were entrepreneurs, the BCom or the commerce side of things was just a match made in heaven almost. And yeah, so I will be honest though, don't picture me as that guy who's got the litigation, who's going to argue your case. I don't do litigation, divorce, civil disputes. So I always like to tell my clients, if they're in trouble on a Friday night, please don't call me. I'm not your man. But I prefer to deal on the commerce side. And also, I feel like that's where, for a business owner, it's also where the legal profession can become a little bit more scalable.
100%. But going back to those studying days, I mean, I'm going to blow your own trumpet a little bit. What our listeners don't know is that you finished with a cum laude on your law degree, so you do know your stuff. So I'm sure if you wanted to do the litigation, you could, but that's not your sweet spot. But something else that struck me is you were quite involved at a university level, sitting on some of the subcommittees, the academic committees. Why that? Some people go to university, get their degree, and then kind of like put it in file 13. But you got quite involved in that space. What was the reasoning, and what did that teach you?
So I'll be honest, Graham, I got involved in that space to boost my CV purely. Those subcommittees were generally around debating and litigation focus. And as I've mentioned, that has never been my goal. So that was a career ploy. And that's about as much as that's brutally honest. That's why I did it.
And honest lawyer, I mean, that must be I'm joking. Well, they do say. I mean, I'll use the KZN rugby analogy. The Natal team are known as the Sharks, I guess this is the butt of the law jokes, right? You're a true Shark supporter, but you yourself are not a Shark, so we can work with that.
Oh yes.
Anyway, Steven, let's move on a little bit. So, I want to look at your CV, and I think what jumps out for a young lawyer like you is your CV's got more founder and co-founder titles than the word law or attorney or anything in there. This is not your first rodeo starting Landsberg and Co. You've done a number of ventures along the way. Talk to us a little bit about what some of those ventures are, large, small, and what they've taught you along the way, whether they've succeeded or whether they've failed. Talk us through that.
Yeah, so I'll be honest, what started it is the shock of actually being in corporate. So I always knew I wanted to be a business owner, but when you are in corporate and you are working 9 to 5, you're learning a lot and it's great, but there's no ownership involved. And so about a year into corporate, I realized that, okay, I need to own something. And in the beginning, it was almost a scramble. Like I needed to own anything. It was, I need to get started. Let's almost take the first idea we come with and run with it and see what happens. So that's where Grad Connect was born. So Grad Connect was a venture I did with a partner and a university friend in Cape Town. And we built a university platform, basically a portal that hoped to link the recruiting world to university students or vetted university students. So that was our first roundtable idea, and we thought, no, let's run with it. We got to do something, not to get out, because I believe that what we learn is in corporate is amazing, but it was to get that ownership, to get that equity, to try build something scalable. Unfortunately,
So it was a side hustle at that time, and but it was, you had to get started. You couldn't just sit on the idea. It was that
exactly.
sort of first dipping your toes into the world of owning something, right?
Exactly. It was I don't want to use the word panic, but it was almost like a panic. We need to do something, and we need to do it right now, because like yesterday is already gone, and
Yeah.
urgency is tantamount or paramount. But
Mm.
yeah, we grew Grad Connect. I think we had around 4,000, 5,000 users on the platform at one stage. But honestly, the fire wasn't there. The passion
Mm.
wasn't there to drive it forward. It is always something that I think about now, that, you know what, if we carried on, we would be 5 years in, and what if it could be something else? But honestly, at the moment, or at the time, it was, we started jumping around a little bit too much. And
Mm.
yeah, then Briefcase came up, which was a couple of years after Grad Connect. And that really, took my mind off Grad Connect itself. And unfortunately, Grad Connect died after that. And I'll be very honest, I'm not proud of it, but it wasn't the path for me.
Mm.
But I'm grateful for what we did and what we learned.
I think that's an important lesson there for entrepreneurs as well. Is sometimes knowing when to let go of something is as important as knowing when to accelerate something, right? Is uh, a lot of founders get stuck on an idea, even if they've fallen out of love with it, or the idea itself has died. And it's hard. You say you've still got some regrets over that, but ultimately that was almost like your starter business, your apprenticeship, if you want to think about that. And I'm sure there was a lot that you learned through that in terms of how you built a business, whether it's dependency on you, whether, yes, it was solving a big problem, be it unemployment and grad connection in South Africa, but it wasn't something that was, I guess, captivating you and having all your energy pouring into that in the early days. And I guess that's what's required in the early days of setting up a business. So you moved into Briefcase. Tell us a little bit about that. What was that about?
So Briefcase is also a project that's been ongoing, and it is software as a service. And if you've dealt with software as a service, the product's never done. So we in
Yeah.
MVP, VP, 0.2, 0.5. So it's an amalgamating. Amalgamating is probably the wrong word, but it's a growing platform that we're adding to all the time. But it
Yeah.
started out as a legal tech, or a legal operating system. So
Mm-hmm.
bottlenecks in legal, for at least from my experience, was always, chasing signatures, version control. There were, filling out precedents that, you've done 100 times, but now you've got to do it again from scratch. So
Mm-hmm.
what we did was we uploaded, or I uploaded the IP that I've accumulated along the way. This was a extremely excruciating process. I don't recommend anyone do it, but we uploaded our IP onto a platform. We built a word-like system that you could then automate going forward, send for tasks, workflow in there. Turns out, after building for 18 months, law firms love Word. And that was also a bit of a kick in the teeth, because now we've spent, 18 to 20 months building this platform that now is almost becoming a hard sell. And that's the last thing you want after 18 months of building, is something to, for people to start asking questions about its validity.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that is an ongoing challenge that we have. We are working similarly to platforms like Jiro. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Jiro. It's a
Yeah.
UK-based company, and Yeah, so we're doing that, and we've also come recently with a great opportunity on the education side. So we've now got Briefcase Education, and the education side is something I'm really excited about. That's got that scalable factor, and really it is AI tracking for assessments. So what happens now, and we've seen the graphs behind some of the big internet-based universities in South Africa, or even high schools. They've got grade 8 to 11. They're using these platforms, online platforms, using AI to help them. As soon as they go to matric and they have to do in-person exams, the standard just drops because they don't understand, or maybe they've been using AI too much, or it's AI has been doing the work for them. So we've now built Briefcase Education, which is basically AI guardrails on assessments. So we can track how the student uses AI. We can block the AI to the best of our abilities. AI's, if you've got your phone next to you, you can always use it there. But it's about, blocking, copying, and paste, getting recording typing habits, uploading our own version of AI so that there's guardrails to the lecturer or teacher's desire.
I think a couple of themes coming out here is that, one is, if you've got an entrepreneurial mindset, one is you've got to get going. You become impatient as an entrepreneur. And two is that the ideas are continually evolving. As an entrepreneur, if you're standing still, you're not going anywhere. And an idea evolves and changes over time. And I guess the other point is around validating that idea. You talk about MVPs, right? The last thing you want to be doing is building for 2 years only to find nobody needs it. So that importance of actually engaging prospective users and figuring out what actually needs to be built. We had a similar issue with bizval. We bought a platform to do valuations, and then we realized nobody wanted the platform. They actually just wanted the independent party to do the work for them. So that platform actually became one of the tools that we use internally, as opposed to selling that as a service. And it's easy to say, oh well, you should have known that 4 or 5 years ago. That's how you learn. You put things out there, you experiment. And I guess as a lawyer, lawyers don't always think like that. Lawyers often work within the boundaries and the framework of the law. You, I guess, have got a problem-solving mindset, and I'm going to get into that just now around what that means for Landsberg and Co. But I mean, these are really important entrepreneurial lessons. So let's just talk a little bit about that. So you busy with Briefcase. You did Grad Connect. You've now started Landsberg and Co. And you've done a few other things between that. But what does that intersection, I guess, between entrepreneurship and law look like for you on a day-to-day basis? Why does that matter for you, and why does that matter for the clients that you serve?
So the difference between entrepreneurship and law.
Yeah. So, I mean, as I say, you've got the law on the one hand, you've got the entrepreneurship on the other hand. You, as Landsberg, are working with entrepreneurs, business owners. How do those two intersect? Why do you think, do you think being an entrepreneur at heart makes you a better lawyer? Does it serve your clients better? And knowing the law side of things, how does that help you when you're dealing with, let's call it, very entrepreneurial clients?
Yeah. So I think going back to law school, law school doesn't set you up to be an entrepreneur, right? It teaches you how to think like a lawyer, but not how to be one. So especially in the early years of development, and I was fortunate enough to have the opportunity to work with business owners and consult with them from a much younger age than I am now.
Yeah.
And honestly, I'm just fascinated by entrepreneurship. I mean, I always, I come home. Oh, I'm so grateful to have meetings with entrepreneurs every day and here. And my biggest question to them always is, like, everyone paints this picture that it's so glamorous and great. You've got this company, you've got 50 employees, you're doing XYZ revenue or ARR or whatever metric you want to call it. But how was it in the beginning? Like, what did you do to get there? And that's always, and what did you rely on? Was it Was it your spirituality? Was it your partner? Was it your wife telling you have to? What was it that made you do it? And that's been my obsession, honestly. So it's Landsberg and Co. I feel like I run a podcast because I work remotely with teams, and oftentimes that I'm on a call, and I get so carried away finding out about this person's business and how they bought it that our time runs out, and then we have to reschedule and actually get to business in the next one. So just the nature of entrepreneurship is something that's fascinating.
Yeah, I think what's super important there, and you're touching on this, is context matters. Nothing, whether it's law, whether it's business, and taking the time to understand the context, get to know the person, the thoughts, the ideas behind whatever problem you're solving is super important. And not a lot of people do that because it's hard and it takes energy, and you've got to engage people rather. And I guess a lot of lawyers typically are very risk averse. They don't want to put themselves out there. They want to operate within the neat boundaries and the frameworks of what the law says. Whereas entrepreneurship actually sometimes requires you to break what's there, look at the existing rule set and say, well, why is it wrong? How can I do it better? And I think those two are at odds, I guess. So I guess that leads me to the next question. When you started Landsberg Law, like what about the old school legal practices? And I'm not knocking them; they definitely have their place. But where do you think they fall short? And what do you do differently in terms of supporting your clients and business owners?
I would say my biggest differentiator, Graham, is that we're very public and educational about what we know. So I place a lot of emphasis on social media, especially platforms like TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. And this is now in the short form content, right?
Yeah.
Pick up the phone, and this is what I know about this topic. I don't know everything, but this is what I know, and this is what I've been taught. And you do that over 2 years, and all of a sudden you've got this platform with 600-700 videos on it that is all based on your expertise. And so now you become more proficient at communicating what you know. And honestly, I feel like there's a lot of opportunity for Landsberg and Co to have its own education wing. And I know I'm bringing up education again. Briefcase has got now an education wing. Landsberg and Co, from our video content, I mean, if you make a video right, I mean, you can educate thousands of people in a day, just from the number of the reach and scale of video content. So I think that's our differentiator. We want to teach. We want to help people.
I think that's so important. I think in old school, a lot of the power and ability we didn't talk about that for professionals to charge ridiculous by the hour rates was almost based on this notion that I know more than you about the law. Okay. So I can charge this. It was knowledge scarcity. Whereas in today's world, let's be frank, with AI and all of that, knowledge is no longer scarce. Anybody can find the knowledge. What they lack, though, is the ability to apply that in context, understand what that means for them. And that's where education comes in. So I love that notion that education is almost at the center of what you do. And you've got the confidence, I guess, to say, well, look, you can go find this information. Because clients are going to do that. If you send a client a brief, they're going to go pop that into AI and ask it to interrogate it. Okay. So best you bring something else to the table in terms of application of that context, else you're going to become irrelevant, right? And I think that for me is kind of the gap that you've seen is bridging that divide between education, realizing that owning knowledge is no longer a superpower, but being able to translate that knowledge into something that a business owner can actually use and act on and make a decision on is probably more important, right?
Yeah. So I think it's authenticity, Graham. There's and this is what my previous, I like to refer to him as my mentor, but my previous boss at my old corporate commercial firm, but he always used to hash onto us, and rightly so. Like, people do business with people who care, not because you know something they don't. So I think that's authenticity, and trying to communicate that at scale and that is where our education wing, I really think, is valuable. And I think it's an opportunity that a lot of legal professionals are not making use of enough.
Yeah. I like that saying, people do business with people that care. I mean, we have a similar saying in our business. We say people do business with people that they like and trust. And it's effectively a very similar notion. So let's go back a little bit, and I want to just kind of drill down on, let's call it the old school law. Okay. So you've done the degree, you've done the articles, the admission, but what are some of the things that, honestly, law school doesn't teach you, and you've had to learn the hard way? A lot of the stuff you've done out of experimentation, you've just kind of learned things growing up entrepreneurial household. But what are some of the hard lessons you've had to learn, and maybe readjust your mindset having had that training in law?
Yeah, so the law is extremely broad. I mean, every sort of corporate or business transaction or property or personal civil transaction that you do requires a lawyer to stamp off at some point. So it really, I personally feel like law school didn't teach me that there were so many different avenues of law. I mean, I knew there were endless modules and texts and books, but you know, um, that doesn't necessarily translate into this is what you can do with that knowledge. So I'll go back to what I said earlier. It teaches you how to think like a lawyer, and how to, phrase your answers and and type like a lawyer. But how to act like a lawyer is really, it all comes from where you're placed after law school.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think that can make a big difference, where you do your articles. Are you in a family type firm where you get to learn that, or you're in a big corporate where you maybe just get stuck in doing litigation all day or research or whatever? And it seems like you've had a bit of both. So I just want to flip it around before we move on to some of your mentors and that along the way. What's one thing, when you get a client coming through your door, or a business owner, what is one thing that you wish that they knew or they understood before they engaged you?
I always like to say, I don't know what I don't know. So it's always good for them to ask questions. So corporate commercial law, especially when you're going down risk mitigation, company reorganizations, it is a specialized platform. It is a specialized niche within the broader the law itself. And it took me, honestly, I didn't know it existed before I was trained in it. And
Sure.
asking questions, like what you don't know, you honestly don't know. And AI can tell you what it thinks, but if you don't ask it the right question, it's going to miss out that whole sector that could exist. So open-mindedness, which I've been fortunate that I've never had to instruct a client to be more open-minded, and I hope I never have to. But yeah, just it's a different way of thinking. Often when you're dealing with a new side or a new profession, or a way that someone does business, it's a completely different rewiring of that their brain is completely different rewired to how yours works. So I always say, I don't expect to know what you know, so I don't expect you to know what I know. But I hope that together we can come and find a solution that works for both of us.
I love that. And I think, maybe historically, if people go to a lawyer and say they're the expert, you should know everything. And even this notion of billing by the hour, sometimes I think clients feel quite intimidated. They feel on the clock. So they don't ask the questions because, well, you should know that, you should tell me. And I think what you've done, or what you're doing with Landsberg, is you're flipping that on its head. You're saying, actually, yeah, we know certain things, we know things about the law, but ask us questions, engage. And even the way, you solutions orientated rather than, and we'll talk about this in a sec, compliance motivated, that makes a big difference. And I think for me, that's a big differentiator in the way that you do business. You take away the intimidation. It's like, hey, we're just two people having a conversation. I know these things and I'm specialized in these things, but I don't know anything about your business. Let's learn together and let's figure out what makes sense. And I think building from that platform, it's refreshing, quite honestly. I mean, I deal with a lot of lawyers. Some of them think the way you do, but a lot of them don't. They think in this very sort of um, frame exactly what you want, and then we'll tell you whether you're right or wrong. They won't go beyond those boundaries. So I love that perspective. Now, you didn't just get there on your own. You grew up in an entrepreneurial family. You haven't built your business on your own. Can you maybe just share a little bit about who some of the mentors and the people who've shaped you, how you built your practice, and how you go about life? Who are some of those influential people, and what have they taught you along the way, Stephen?
So I would say, starting closest to home, growing up in an entrepreneurial household. I mean, my parents were both, at times, my dad still is an entrepreneur, and 20, for a few decades now, at least a couple decades. So with that comes, of course, hard times and challenges. And those challenges have clearly been overcome because they are still standing today. So I think in terms of how I approach in terms of the model, I mean, you don't want to make a business model too aggressive. You don't want to come out firing too hard. You don't want to, rush the sale or try close sales too aggressively. So in terms of understanding the mechanics and consistency over time and small positive movements in the right direction accumulate, I think that's really something that I learned close to home. And then professionally speaking, how to engage with clients, how to read the room, almost how to have influence without being a bully or having an ego. I think that is, and things like you mentioned billing by the hour versus fixed fee outcome based packages. That is, something that is a lot more common in the law now, in newer modern legal practices, but the billable hour has always been something that was the dominant, or is the status quo almost. So
Yeah. The ego
just
metric.
flipping it on.
What's your billable hour? Is it 7,000 rand an hour or 700 rand an hour? It almost kind of, the more you charge, the better you are. It was that sort of
Yeah,
bragging rights, right?
yeah, but also outcome based. I mean, you
Yeah.
want the client to come in, they know what it costs at the get go. It's like you're going to Checkers or Woolworths, and depending on how long you shop, that's your bill at the end. It's like, oh, I don't want to do that. What if I get lost on aisle 3? Can't find,
Exactly.
potato chips.
If
So
that was the
outcome,
model, I could imagine how the retailers would design their store. It would be like a maze, right? You get
exactly.
in there and never know how to get out.
Yeah, exactly that.
So I want to kind of move on to the next question. And I guess this is talking around that sort of compliance mindset versus a growth mindset. And you've alluded to this. The legal mindset and the business owner mindset are almost wired differently. One is almost wired to spot risk and say no, and the other is wired to chase opportunity. And I can see you're obviously more to the latter. But do you think in practice that that's a problem? You've touched on that, but how do you bridge that? How do you bridge that gap?
So essentially building sustainably. Compliance, of course, as professionals, accountants, doctors, attorneys, finance analysts, everyone. I mean, I always like to say, or I like to think that we're in the business of admin. I mean, the admin is sky high. There's KYC, there's FICA, there's certified copies of everything down to whatever your grandmother did. So it is a lot, and I don't know, checklists and compliance are at the forefront, which of course becomes a bottleneck to scale, which is what I mentioned earlier. So it's about trying to nurse the pipeline and build a pipeline that's not going to drown you in the short term, because it's can be quick and easy to just collect mandates and invoices and people pay, but nothing's been done often with compliance headaches and administration, and working with government and third parties, things can take time. So building up a big pipeline is great. Of course, that's what every business owner wants, is the scale, but actually being able to accurately and consistently deliver on all of those mandates, where something may only become relevant 2 months after the client is paid, because that's just how long the system takes, or the relevant department you're dealing with takes to get their rubber stamp. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's that balance. So you also have to make sure that you engage in the client to know that you are there. You've solved the problem for them. As you say, sometimes the courts move slowly, so they've paid up front. You've done the compliance tick boxes, but the value maybe only gets delivered 2 or 3 months down the line. Sometimes even longer, depending on the system. I want to move on to one last question, and then we're going to go into what we call our rapid fire round. It's just a few questions just to get to know you, Steven, and we do it with all our guests. But you've been quite vocal about AI and technology and where that fits in the legal space. And that unverified AI work can be a real liability. You've used AI in the building of some of your products. So talk to us a little bit about kind of where you see AI coming into the legal space, what it does well, what it doesn't, and how you kind of hold that tension between, sure, this is a great efficiency tool, a thought enabler, versus the dangers that it can potentially exist used completely unchecked.
Yeah, so I will verbatim say I love AI. I think it is amazing. There is the opportunities it brings. I like to think of Google was just a search engine. You searched everything. Now you've got basically Google as a friend, and you can just ask this AI anything about anything. In terms of law, it does need to be vetted. So as you mentioned, you have clients that you send valuations to, they pop it into AI and they come back with all these questions. Now, I don't know anything about what you do, so I don't know how you can respond to those questions, but I know when my clients run my documents through AI, it comes back with some ridiculous concepts, but stated in beautiful language. So it sounds good and it sounds legit, but it's just not supposed to be there. So that's one aspect, is that it tends to glorify things that maybe it shouldn't. It tends to overcomplicate where maybe a more simple and direct approach is necessary. And there was one other great point that I had that I'll maybe get to, but it tends to
I can
agree
use an
with
analogy there just to jump in and get your thoughts on this. Is think about a university lecturer, right? You can go to university and the lecturer can say, "There's the textbook. Go and read the textbook. Everything you need to know about this course and to pass the course is in the textbook." But ultimately, to bring that education theme in, a great lecturer is able to bring that to life through stories, through experience, and through context. And I suppose what you're doing is no different. Clients are going to use AI as a great tool, it's an efficiency tool, but what you bring to the table there is that verification. And two is still being able to educate and separate out, let's call it the wheat from the chaff, because to an uninformed person, it might seem plausible and good enough, but you as an expert are able to kind of say, actually, no, that's not quite right. It's the subtleties which your expertise kind of fills in the gap, so to speak.
Exactly. And I mean, I can't stress this enough. It's just dealing with people. I mean, especially when you're dealing with founders and entrepreneurs, it's like they're doing something great and cool. I'm doing something great and cool. At least I think so. Like, let's try have fun with the process and learn. Like, of course, it's professional and it's business, and we need to tick all the compliance boxes. Super important, but let's try and enjoy it and learn something on the way. I mean, it is our experience, and I feel like that helps a lot. But back on that AI, I remember now, depending on what model you use, of course, there's a big Claude versus GPT versus Gemini, and I'm not sure what your preferred thing is, but the AI I use can sometimes be agreeable, which is you don't want someone who's agreeable with you to, handle your legal stuff.
Yeah.
Because you can't agree on the law. The law is what the law is.
Yeah.
So
It can be
that's something
very flattering. It makes you feel like the expert, right?
yeah, amazing. And it says it in 100 different ways because you challenge it on every time it steps out of place, and it's like, oh no,
Yeah.
but you're really right, and this is what you must consider. And so I think that can be dangerous, is just trusting. You don't necessarily trust without verification.
Absolutely. I mean, Stephen, it's been a phenomenal chat. Before I ask you sort of the rapid fire questions, and those are just 5 quick questions, is there anything that you would like to leave to anyone listening to the podcast today? Any closing thoughts? Now's your opportunity.
Mantra is do cool things with cool people. That's what I like to do. So that's it.
So basically, anybody who wants to work with a cool, young, out the box, forward thinking lawyer, they need to get hold of you. How can our listeners get hold of you, Stephen? What's the best way to reach out? Other than checking out your famous TikTok videos, I'm sure you give your TikTok handle out.
Yeah, so I'm at Steve Landsberg or at Steven Landsberg on all major social media profiles. I've got links there to my emails, to my website. So you can reach me. I promise even a Google search should come up right. So you can reach me there, see my credibility, see what I do. And yeah, if I can help you or just even have a conversation and learn about what you do, that would be great. Yeah.
Fantastic. So let's move on. This is just the last section. We do it with all our guests. Just 5 questions. The first thing that comes to mind, and this is just to get to know you a little bit more. The man behind the business and that. One book that you think every founder should read.
Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself by Dr. Joe Dispenza.
Okay, we'll have to put that in the notes. It sounds like an interesting read. I haven't heard about it. What's it about, briefly?
So it's basically a quantum physics approach on reality, I guess. It breaks it down to the science. What are we doing? What are we essentially? Are we matter or are we divine creatures? Basically that. But of course, then once that veil is pierced, you can imagine the rabbit hole may go deeper. So that's how I would describe that book.
It sounds incredible. I'm going to have to get a copy of that.
Amazing.
Back to the law. One contract clause that most business owners get wrong.
Limitation of liability.
And in what context? Why is that an issue?
It's most of the time it's not there, which can be an issue. And when it is there, sometimes it absconds all liability. So that's something that must be checked.
Fantastic. What is a venture that you wish you had started? I mean, there's still time to start it, but often an opportunity is an intersection of an idea and being at the right time. But looking back over the last few years, anything that you regret not having started?
Not regret not having started, but something I would like to get involved in is plant hire, construction plant hire.
I can connect you with someone, so let's talk about it.
That's amazing. Yeah.
Then, what's the best thing about being a boy from KZN and playing the game?
We live on holiday whilst doing what we love.
Do you surf by any chance? Or you?
I'm not a surfer. No.
You're from KZN. You don't
man.
surf. I mean, we're going to have to talk about that.
Yeah.
And then finish the sentence. The business owner that sleeps well at night is the one who
has a great team.
Yeah, I mean that's so important. You can't build a business on your own. There's that other saying: if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to If you want to go with purpose and go with the team. And I think we see that day in and day out. If you let your ego become the business, that business is on very shaky foundations, and it often happens, way more often than we would like to admit. Steven, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. I think there's so many nuggets and so many gems in here, but I think more than anything else, just your authenticity and just the way that you talk about your business, your learnings, your background, and I'm sure we'd love to get you on the show again, and we can go into a bunch of other topics. But thanks for being here. And to our listeners, that's the end of the podcast for today. If you found it valuable, please like and share and tell all your friends about it. If you didn't, keep it to yourself. But until next time, thank you for listening, and join us on the next bizvalglobal.com podcast soon.
Thanks, Graham. Cheers.